Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions, finally here to talk about a new episode of This Is Us, Season 5, Episode 7, titled There. This was originally supposed to air the week after Birth Mother, but then it was announced that the show would be delayed. There was a date given of February 9th, but that was not originally definitive. Then we heard that the show was actually supposed to come back February 2nd, only to once again be postponed until February 9th. The delay was caused by coronavirus in the Los Angeles area. I would actually be fascinated to hear from series creator Dan Fogelman on what exactly was going on during this time. How much of the episode was shot? How much was there left to do in post-production? I actually tweeted at the creator Dan Fogelman about this issue. I highly doubt I'll hear anything from him, but I thought it was worth a shot, because I think the story behind this would be fascinating. A peek into what production was like during the pandemic era. But anyway, this video is not about that. That's a video for another time, if ever. We are here to talk about the episode There. I would remind people that this is not a spoiler-free video, so if you have not yet watched the episode, feel free to go watch that and then come back and watch my video. We start this episode by annoying the ever-loving crap out of me with a shot of a car off the road, on fire, and with Kevin's ID on the ground. Leaning into the whole promo idea of, oh no, is Kevin's life in danger? Is something bad going to happen to Kevin? Look, guys, we have seen the future. We know Kevin is fine in the future. So the whole idea of trying to introduce this tension is just plain old silly. And they do occasionally lean into this idea a little bit during the course of this episode, especially early on, but it's not all that intrusive, like I thought it was going to be. Incidentally, the cold open was only 1 minute and 17 seconds. That is the shortest that I have seen since I started taking note of it. After the credits, we see a young Jack. Internet Movie Database lists him about 11 years old, about ready to play a championship game. He's wearing a baseball uniform. His dad, played by Peter Hornady, enters the scene, and for once, he is not being a total jackass. But we know this isn't going to last, and we get the feeling that Jack knows this too. We cut a little further into the future, where young Kevin is reading over his plays and trying to memorize them. Jack enters the scene, and apparently they're going to some kind of football camp, where, according to Jack, 2 Penn State quarterbacks are going to be. If Kevin does well, he says, everybody will know that he is the next Terry Bradshaw. Kevin says he's looking forward to it, though I'm not entirely sure that he is. And Jack is trying to be encouraging here, but I get the feeling he's actually adding to his son's nervousness about the camp. Now, I have made note of the fact that I think Jack as a character has outlived his usefulness on this series, that his appearances should be more limited going forward. If you have a story for him, great, but don't force appearances. He was a cameo in The Long Road Home, and he wasn't in Birth Mother at all. So maybe the creators are actually going in this direction. As far as his appearance in this episode, I thought it was pretty good. And it seems to tie in pretty good with the overall story that they were trying to tell here. We cut to the present day, where Kevin is rehearsing his lines in Vancouver, practicing basically being a lawyer, because he's about to have a scene with Robert De Niro. He gets a call from Kate, who's thanking him for the edible arrangement he sent. Because today is going to be the day that the birth mother for the baby that Toby and Kate are adopting is being induced. She said that the gesture was oddly romantic in a weird sort of way. And Kevin says that he isn't sure what an appropriate gift for the occasion would be. Kate suggests a Tesla. And Kevin comes back with that they don't make chocolate-covered Teslas, which is highly unfortunate, by the way. They totally should. The conversation goes on for a little while, and Kevin reveals that he's having a big courtroom scene with Robert De Niro. It's his "Did you order the code red?" moment. And he says that every time he thinks about it, he pees a little. Kate thinks this gross, and I think this goes under the TMI category. Kevin also tells her that he is back next week, and he won't leave the house a month. All he's going to do is stare at Madison's belly. Well, you might need to eat on occasion, and, take care of that peeing problem of yours, but otherwise, aw. Kate's babysitter arrives, and she says that she has to go, and Kevin tells her to wish the birth mother happy pushing. Kate says that she's not going to do that, and I don't blame her. And Kate asks Kevin to tell De Niro that he is a big fan of his, or she is a big fan of his, rather. And Kevin also says he's not going to do that. And that, my friends, is the last we see of Kate in this episode. Kevin is making his way on to set when he gets a call from Madison, who's telling him that she thinks she's going into labor, and that it's not Braxton Hicks, that it's the real deal. She's on her way to the hospital, and Kevin hopes that this is a false alarm. She tells him that she'll call him when she gets to the hospital and to pick up if she can. And Kevin seems upset, because this wasn't supposed to happen for another couple weeks. And if I'm right in the timeline, and I believe they actually stated the timeline as being 30 weeks in this episode, that's a worrisome situation. The director, Foster, sees Kevin and tells him that they should be beginning rehearsal in 5 minutes. Kevin tells him the big news. And in response, Foster puts on his plastic shield thing when he's already wearing a mask. Is that really necessary? I don't know. That seems like overkill for me, but whatever. Foster is happy with this news. He congratulates him. But Kevin seems uncertain. He mentions the fact that the twins are 6 weeks early. And he knows that twins, generally speaking, come early. But that's 3 weeks, not 6 weeks. The director tries to be reassuring, telling him that his brother was born super early, and he just graduated valedictorian from high school. But Kevin doesn't sound convinced. In fact, he sounds like he's somewhere else, and really, he is. And Kevin tells him she seemed pretty scared, and she's alone, and I think I should go to her. And I think a lot of Kevin's hesitancy so far in this scene is he's working the problem out in his mind, trying to make a decision about what exactly he should do. And I think he makes it right here. The director hears him and makes him an offer. A not totally unreasonable offer, I might add. Basically trying to get him on the road after 9 hours. But that's not good enough for Kevin. Kevin thinks he needs to leave and go now. And he does so. If Madison had any doubt about what Kevin's priorities are here, this should answer that question. It answers it for me, and I say bravo to Kevin. A lot of people had a different take on that, though. They were concerned about Kevin's career and how this might damage it. Now, I'm sure the situation comes up on movie sets and television sets, and I couldn't tell you how those situations were handled, how the actors who were involved in those situations would choose to handle it, whether they would walk out or continue filming it. If there's somebody in this world who happens to be watching this video, I highly doubt it, but if there's someone with knowledge on this situation who would like to give me some insight, I would be more than happy to hear from you. But as for me, and I find it odd that if you're a fan of the show and a fan of Kevin, though a lot of people aren't, and I understand where they're coming from, I personally am, despite the fact that I give his character a lot of crap. I'm not really concerning myself with Kevin's career. We see in the future timeline that he's doing just fine and that he has awards. I am concerned about his family situation. And I believe that Kevin made the right call here. It's what I would have done. We cut to the past timeline where Jack, dressed in his baseball uniform, is going out to the car. His dad asks him, "How you feeling, son? Ready to pitch a no-hitter?" And Jack says he's feeling good. And then he notices the beer in the car. He knows which direction this is going to go. We go a little further in the timeline where Jack and Kevin are about to walk out the door. And Jack says, "It's going to be some adventure." Cut to Kevin grabbing his stuff from his trailer and getting in the car. He calls Madison and asks, how is she doing? She's on the way to the hospital, and she doesn't think they're fake contractions. Kevin tells her that he is on the way. Madison sounds surprised by this. He tells her to hang in there. He is on the way. But I think he forgets his cape, or maybe it's in his suitcase, I don't know. We cut to Jack in the past, and we can see that from his bearing that the game did not go very well. He approaches his dad, who says, "It's always exciting to see a game end with a walk-off home run. Just not when your kid is pitching." And Jack says, "I only gave up one run. It's not my fault that my teammates didn't hit." And Jack's dad is all, "That sounds like an excuse to me. You know, if you're a real baseball fan and your son gives up only one run in a game, that deserves a pat on the back, win or lose." But of course, Jack's dad is a jackass. Jack is concerned that his dad is a little too drunk to drive, and he suggests maybe waiting around a little bit before going home. His dad is super annoyed with this and responds by giving Jack the keys and telling him to drive home. Now let me say that again. His dad just gave his 11-year-old son and told him to drive them home. Cut to Jack and Kevin driving in the car on their way to camp. Jack shuts off the radio to ask Kevin if he ever told him that he actually played Little League back in the day. Kevin just nods his head no. And Kevin says, or rather Jack says, that he had dreams of being the next Bob Friend. And Kevin has no idea who that is. Bob Friend was a major league pitcher from 1951 to 1966 with a win-loss record of 197 versus 230 and a 3.58 ERA. And interesting to note that his final year was with the New York Mets, which is my team, for those of you who don't know. Kevin takes the occasion to basically make fun of Jack for being old. Kevin is looking through the brochure for football camp and points out that it's really expensive, but Jack tells him not to worry about that. When he gets a scholarship to Penn State, this weekend will be the best investment he ever made. This is Jack once again trying to be encouraging, but not realizing that he just put way more pressure on the young Kevin. We cut to Kevin, who is trying to get Miguel and Rebecca to arrange a flight so that he can go and see Madison. Incidentally, this is the first time that we are seeing the older Rebecca and Miguel since the season premiere of this season. Now, I'm sure many of you know, but Mandy Moore is actually pregnant. And this being a pandemic, this is not a great situation for that, to be filming a television show. As a result, her screen time has been limited. Kevin gets distracted and almost hits the car in front of him. And then he nearly gets cut off by another driver. Well, damn, Kevin, that's 2 near-death experiences in the matter of a few minutes. Not even a minute. Maybe you should consider paying attention. And this is actually the creators trying to create some tension as far as Kevin's situation and his life being in danger. Miguel finds some domestic flights, and he says that he will call him back and try to arrange a flight. Meanwhile, his agent continuously is calling Kevin, much to Kevin's annoyance. Kevin finally takes the agent's call, and the agent, after hearing the situation, is like, well, maybe we'll get you back to LA, you can meet the babies, and then we can fly you back to Vancouver. And Kevin is not in the mood to hear this, so he just says, I'm not doing this right now, I'll call you back. He sees that Madison is calling him, and he picks up the phone. And his attitude changes. He is an actor after all. Madison tells him that she is waiting for a room. She's not in active labor, so nobody is in a rush to see her. Kevin is annoyed by this because she was supposed to have a private room. But this wasn't supposed to happen for at least another couple of weeks, so nobody was prepared for it. Kevin is prepared to call the hospital to get this matter settled. Madison says that it's okay. But Kevin says, no, this is not okay. You're supposed to have a private room, and that's what you're going to get. And this feels a little bit like Kevin doesn't have control of the situation because he's in a car trying to get to her. And this is something he can do, so he's going to try to do it. But, once again, as he's distracted, he almost drives into the other lane and gets hit by a car. Almost. Once again, his 3rd near-death experience in a matter of minutes. Do you get it yet, Kevin? Pay attention to where you're going! And once again, shame on the writers for playing up this angle of worrying about Kevin's safety. After he nearly dies, Madison asks, where are you? And Kevin tells her that he's in the car and that Miguel and Rebecca are trying to book him a flight. And she says, okay, very quietly, with a hint of emotion. And Kevin assures her that he's coming. I promise. And there's a little hint of desperation in Kevin's voice that he really wants to convince her and for her to understand that he is doing everything in his power to get to her. Which is when we see that Randall is calling. And we get the other half of the conversation, or really we saw it both ways, both times, but we see this time from Kevin's perspective. The same call that we saw in Birth Mother. And then he gets a call from his director, who's telling him that he knows he's emotional, but he would like Kevin to turn around. He needs him to. Kevin does not react very well to this. He starts yelling at him, telling him to shut up. Nobody cares about his stupid movie, and he quits. I didn't have a problem with the director's comments when they were initially talking. I did have a problem with this. How did you think this was going to go? And why would you even try this? What kind of performance do you think you're going to get out of him with Kevin in this state? Kevin has more important things on his mind than your movie. Though from your perspective, I suppose the movie is more important. And I guess you can't blame a guy for trying, but still. And man, I gotta say, that was a very eventful 5 minutes of driving. We cut to Jack with his father in the past. He seems to be having anxiety about driving, and his dad is basically unsympathetic, telling him, any day now. And thus begins what I'm sure will be a fun trek home for him. Meanwhile, a little further into the timeline, Jack and Kevin arrive at the hotel, where they run into Kevin's coach and the 2 Penn State quarterbacks that Jack said would be there. We go from this scene to young Kevin puking in the bathroom, most likely from stress and anxiety, where Jack eventually finds him and asks if he's okay. We cut to the present day timeline, where Kevin is still driving. He's on the phone with Madison, who finally has a room. He's still trying to get a flight from Miguel and Rebecca. And Madison says the doctors took a look, and the babies are fully cooked, fully developed, and ready to come. And Kevin makes a joke. Not even medium rare. Just how I like them. And you know what, Kevin? I really don't need to know how you like to eat your babies. Madison makes the comment that things are getting a little away from them in this conversation. Though in this situation, levity is very much a good thing. Madison also says that it's not Braxton Hicks, that it is in fact labor, though the contractions have slowed down, which doctors have said is normal. The babies are coming. And Kevin says, well, you keep those contractions slow, because I'm coming too. And Madison says that she will do her best. The nurse says that it's time to shift the babies, like they talked about, and Madison has to go. Right after the phone conversation, Kevin calls Miguel, and Miguel tells him that he did manage to get a flight out of Seattle, which is where my mom lives, by the way. Kevin is so happy that he could kiss Miguel, but he would immediately regret it after. I don't know, Kevin. Miguel's a fine-looking man, but I'm pretty sure, unlike a lot of other people, he won't sleep with you. As it turns out, the flight is in 2 hours, and Kevin is an hour away from there, so he totally can make it on time. Kevin asks to speak to Rebecca. Kevin tells her that he wanted the delivery day to be extra special, that he wanted to be there to be waiting for her on hand and foot, that he wanted to be, and he pauses. Rebecca finishes the sentence for him, like his father. In response, Rebecca says, Kevin, I know you put him on a pedestal, and I don't blame you. He was a wonderful father. But I promise you, and unfortunately this is where the line goes dead, because Kevin has driven into a place with no signal. And it's rather unfortunate, because I think what Rebecca was about to tell him is something that he really needed to hear. Kevin continues driving for a little bit, and then he notices that part of the railing has a big hole in it. He gets out to investigate and finds a car that has driven off the road. The car that we saw in the opening seconds of this episode. He looks at his phone, presumably to call 911. But, as it turns out, he has no reception. So he has to go help the guy himself. Cut to Jack, young Jack, driving with his father, who is going on a rant about everything that is wrong with Jack and everything that is wrong with his mother, insisting that he goes faster, continually adding more and more pressure to the fact that Jack is driving for the first time. Jack finally has enough and tells his father to shut the heck up. And much to my surprise, his father does so. Not without one last parting shot, but nevertheless he does so. Now here's the interesting thing about Stanley, Jack's dad here. Jack, without saying so, raises a concern about his drinking and his ability to drive. In response, Stanley gives him the keys. He is responsive to his son's concerns. He does so in a jackass way, but he still listens to his son. We've never seen this man be anything but a butthole. But we've never really seen violence from him. In a video I just did in season 1, that episode started off with Jack's dad getting into it with his mother, and it looks like things are about to get violent. But then they don't, because Jack intervenes. He doesn't respond by getting violent on Jack. He just tells him that they deserve each other and walks away. Jack tells him here to shut the heck up, and he does so. I'm not saying that he's a great man or anything. Oh, he most definitely is not. But it's interesting that both times in this episode, he responds to his son's concerns. He gives him the keys to the car, which is beyond stupid and irresponsible. And here he just shuts up. We cut to Jack and Kevin in the hotel room. Kevin is sitting on the bed, and Jack is trying to make him feel better with a glass of water. Kevin blames Mom's sloppy joes. And it's funny because this is the kind of comment that I could totally see current Kevin making. Jack's not buying it. He asks Kevin, what's going on? And Kevin asks, what if I suck tomorrow? What if I'm not really all that great at football? That means I have nothing. And Jack says, nothing, incredulously. Kevin, what are you talking about? He asks. Kevin says that he and Mom talks about it all the time. Randall is a genius, and all I have is football. And Jack says, that's not true. That isn't all that you have. And Kevin tells him, I heard you and Mom talking. I heard you say that I'm soft. And this is interesting because I really didn't think they would follow up on this particular plot point or this conversation between Jack and Rebecca, which I believe occurred in the episode Changes. And Jack takes a moment to take this in. He says, look, I don't know what you think you overheard, but that's not what I meant. And Kevin fires back, yes, it is. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. We never do anything alone together, but you took the time to bring me here. Because you think that football is my only chance to be special. And Jack responds, that's what you think I think? And Kevin responds, I know that's what you think. The coach doesn't think I have what it takes, and he calls me stupid all the time. And Jack seems very displeased by that comment. Jack suggests that they go and get some food, that they put some food in that stomach to get his stomach settled. Though I'm not sure that bar food is really the way to go there, but whatever. I don't think that's really his motivation. Kevin says that he has an early morning and that he should probably just go to bed. But Jack insists. Cut to the present day where Kevin is playing hero. He opens the car door to reveal Joshua Molina of the West Wing fame, and he also was in quite a few episodes of Scandal. I knew he was going to be in this episode, though I didn't know how, because his name showed up in the credits. Kevin is trying to get him out of the car, and I'm really not sure how smart that is. I'm not sure that he should be moved. But given the lack of available options, I guess this is the best way to go. Kevin eventually gets him in the car, and on the way we go to the hospital. But not before seeing a shot of him leaving his wallet behind. We cut to Kevin and Jack entering the bar to get some food. Jack quickly orders 2 steaks, and they sit at the bar and wait for their food. One can make the argument that this is not a great place for Jack to be, given that he's a recovering alcoholic. But he seems disinclined to drink, as he orders 2 Cokes. Jack tells him that football is not all that he has. He was absolutely excited when he learned that Kevin would be the starting quarterback, because it was exciting to watch him shine. Football is not the only thing that he has. Do you understand? And Kevin says that he does so. After a long pause, Jack tells him that his dad used to go to his Little League games. He never missed them. It was the one thing he always showed up for. And he made them a living hell for me. He would get drunker and drunker. When he would win, he would at least be a happy drunk. When he'd lose, different matter entirely. He started praying before every game, because a good game meant a good car ride home. Baseball, the thing that I loved, became all about him. Every pitch he threw, he could hear his father's voice in his ear. Don't screw this up, Jack. Get out of your head, Jack. What a waste of a Sunday, Jack. Kevin says, I didn't know that he was like that. You never talk about him. And Jack responds, yeah, well, being out on the road, being in a bar with my son, makes a guy want to open up. Jack responds, or says eventually, he wasn't all bad, my dad. That's what makes our parents loom so hard in our heads. There are a million things to us all at once. We cut to the little further back in the timeline with Jack and his dad. They have just arrived home. And Jack's dad says, not bad. I didn't know that you had that in you. Indy 500, watch out, he says with a smile. A very rare moment of love and encouragement from his dad. We hear Jack's voice. Even after they're long gone, you're stuck with them. You can't help it. They're inside of us. My whole life I said I would never be anything like him. But here I am putting all this pressure on you. That's the thing about Jack, is he recognized his mistake. Jack goes on to say, making you so nervous that you get sick. And then I'm just like him. And Kevin tells him, no, Dad, you are way better than him. Jack smiles emotionally and says, thank you, my son. And Jack says, you're going to be way better than me. And Kevin replies, maybe. Jack spots Kevin's coach, which is why I think he went to this bar in the first place. He was hoping to spot his coach. He goes to the bathroom, and Jack follows him. And he says, I'm just letting you know, I'm going to be at every game this season. And the coach said he figures he would be, watching his son. But Jack says, no, not just my son. I'm going to be watching you too. Don't ever call my son stupid. And the coach starts to look scared. And Jack says in a very intimidating way, tell me that you understand. And the coach indicates that he does. And then Jack hands him the paper towel, which some people have said that that's a big-time power move from Jack. After this scene, the coach looks like he's about to wet himself, which, really unfortunate because he's already in the bathroom. And Kevin asks what he might have said to the coach. And Jack says, nothing, while casually eating his steak. Way to stick up for your son. I'm not sure if Kevin believes him or not. Cut to Kevin in the car with his new buddy, who's not looking so hot. After trying to call Madison, the guy finally seems to recognize who he is. Kevin tries to keep the guy conscious and talking, and eventually tells him about Madison. And he talks about his dad and says that he was always there, hence the title of the episode. That he would have found a way to both save this guy's life and get to Madison at the same time. And I'm sure he probably would have defeated Thanos too. Man, this is really sad. Jack's whole thing was about being better than his father. And Kevin's is living up to Super Dad, which we basically know Jack wasn't. He was a good man, and he was a good father, but he certainly had his flaws. And Kevin, you are being way too hard on yourself. Exactly what do you think you should be doing that you aren't already doing? Do you think you should have just left this man to die? You saved this man's life, you're getting him to the hospital, and then you're going to try to get to the airport. What else can you do? And the fact that you have these concerns about being a great dad, about living up to your dad, is actually a good sign. If you weren't worried about those things, I'd be more concerned. But you are. You're asking the right questions. The passenger says to him that he's rich and famous, and that his kids will worship him. And Kevin says that's not enough. And he's right. It isn't enough. But I am more than confident that you will supply the rest. In my view, Kevin has really grown as a person. And he will absolutely be there for his kids. He gets the guy to the hospital and then manages to make it to the airport on time, with just one pretty major hitch. He dropped his wallet, which he's only realizing now. He begs the TSA agent to let him through. He does the whole, do you know who I am bit, but he doesn't do it in a jackass kind of way. He does it in a, you can identify me by just looking me up on Google. And he says if he doesn't get on this flight, if he doesn't manage to get there for the birth of his children, it will break him. Some people didn't like Kevin doing this. But here's the thing. He's desperate, emotional, not thinking with his head. He's thinking purely with emotions. And in his view, he has to try to get on that plane, no matter what. If he fails, then so be it. But he's got to try. And you would too if you were in that situation. This scene does not end conclusively, despite some people feeling like he missed his flight. But we don't get an answer as the scene ends. We cut to Madison, who the nurse is telling her that she's only 3 centimeters dilated. Eventually, the nurse asks her, "Is everything okay?" And Madison says, "I never thought I would be doing this alone." The nurse suggests calling somebody. And Madison says that there's only 2 people that she considers herself close to. And I thought for a moment that she was going to say the babies were the only 2 that she considered herself close to. But she names Kate, who's about to have the adopted mom give birth to her child. And the other is hopefully on a plane. She doesn't know because she can't reach him. Mostly because he doesn't have a signal. And although this scene is very sad, I was heartened that she clearly demonstrates that she believes in Kevin here. I'm pretty sure that Kevin doesn't think that she does. That she isn't as confident in him as she apparently is. And I'm also heartened by the fact that she considers herself close to him. After where we were when we last saw this couple. She's not close to her parents, so she really doesn't have anybody right now. Though, I'm sure if she called Kate, Kate would be there for her. It's not like she's giving birth herself. But Madison isn't going to make that call. The nurse tells her that she has to check on her other mamas and takes off from the scene. Madison takes off the mask and starts to cry, which is when she gets a call from Randall. And Randall says, "I spoke to Kevin, and I know that he's trying to get to you. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call. We're still driving home from New Orleans, so if you want to have some food sent over there, or anything, we just want you to know that we're here." And this seems to make Madison cry harder. Through tears, she simply says, "Okay," and thanks him. "Or if you want, we can stay on the phone with you for a while." And Madison's like, no, I'm fine, through tears. Clearly not fine. And Randall says, "Are you sure?" Gently. "Madison, we really can stay on the line for you. Your family." And at this point, Madison is full on sobbing. And so am I. "I'm not crying. You're crying." And Madison says, "Okay. That would be really nice, actually." And Randall says, "Of course. As long as you need." And that is where the episode ends. And man, that was an excellent episode. Maybe it's just because I haven't seen a new episode in a while, but that was a great episode. Yes, I was annoyed with the creators for trying to create tension as far as Kevin's safety was concerned. But other than that, great episode. A lot of people were really happy that Randall reached out to Madison. I'm one of them. But they also took it a little further than I'm willing to go, in the sense that they thought that this was a sign that Randall was really over the fight with Kevin. And honestly, that we got that indication in the last episode when he called Kevin in the first place. They felt that Randall would not have done that earlier in the season, and I just don't believe that. I believe even if he were still mad at Kevin, if he got wind of the situation, he would do exactly this. This is just who he is. So yes, this is an incredibly touching gesture, and it was great to see, but I don't think it's an indication of anything other than Randall's character. Anyway, if you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join my Cormorant Productions Facebook group. You can join my This Is Us discussion page, also on Facebook. You can buy something on the Cormorant Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. All of those links should be in the video's description. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Cormorant Productions, signing off.